Now we'll talk about inserting and deleting frame. If you're following along, I'm in 06_insert_delete.fla in the Chapter 4 folder in the Exercise Files folder. What we're going to do is add some lines when the robot opens its mouth so it looks a little bit more like the robot's talking. Let's first lock the head layer by clicking the dot underneath the lock icon on the head layer. Then we'll create a new layer above the head layer by clicking the Insert Layer button at the bottom left of the timeline. Double-click the name of the new layer and change its name to Words. Select Frame 2 of the Words layer and press F6 on your keyboard to insert a new keyframe. Notice what's different about the keyframe you just created as opposed to the other keyframes we've created. You might need to deselect all the frames in order to tell the difference. To deselect all frames, click in the gray area off the stage. Notice the keyframe you just created has a white background and a hollow black outline of a circle. That indicates a blank keyframe, or a keyframe that doesn't have any art in it. Remember that the keyboard shortcut F6 inserts a keyframe. That keyframe is a copy of the last keyframe you created. The last keyframe that was created on the Words layer was a blank keyframe, and that's why we created a blank keyframe when we pressed F6 on our keyboard. Select the second frame of the Words layer, and let's draw some lines. Select the Line tool. Remember the keyboard shortcut for that is N. Going to choose a white stroke, so in the Property Inspector, click the Stroke Color picker, choose white for the stroke, and then click and drag after the robot's mouth to create some talking lines. I'm going to draw 4 lines. And once you have lines that look like the robot's talking, that's good. And then I'm going to create some keyframes, and then I'm going to delete keyframes here. Now what we need to do is create another keyframe where the robot has its mouth open. If you want to use these same lines, you can do it in this way. Select frame 5 of the Words layer, and then press F6 on your keyboard to create a keyframe. I'm going to test the movie by pressing Command Return or Control Enter on my keyboard. It looks like the robot's talking, but the words aren't disappearing when the robot closes its mouth. So let's close the preview window and return to Flash. What we're going to have to do is create a keyframe that has no art in it. There are 2 different ways to do that. Select frame 4 of the Words layer. This is where the robot has its mouth closed. If we deleted the art on the stage right now, what would happen? Because you can't directly modify art on a frame, the art would affect the last keyframe. The last keyframe on the Words layer is frame 2. You can tell because there's a black dot on that frame. So we don't want to just erase the art, we need to create a keyframe and erase the art in that keyframe. One way to do this is to create a regular keyframe here by pressing F6 on your keyboard, and then by deleting the art on the stage. Because there's a keyframe here, if I delete the art by pressing Delete on my keyboard, the art on only that keyframe will be removed. You can tell that the art is removed because there's a blank keyframe on frame 4 of the Words layer. Now if we test the movie by pressing Command Return or Control Enter, we can see that the animation looks a little bit more realistic. Let's close the preview window. And let me show you a little bit faster way to do the same thing. I'm going to press Command Z or Control Z on the PC a few times to step back. And what we're looking for is before we created the keyframe on frame 4. So you want to be looking at frame 4 in the Words layer and watch it until it turns into a regular frame. I'm pressing Command Z now. So now it's a regular frame. What I'm going to do is select that frame in the Words layer, and instead of pressing F6 on my keyboard, I'm going to choose Insert, Timeline, and Blank Keyframe. Notice there's no keyboard shortcut mentioned. For some reason, the keyboard shortcut is not listed here. But the keyboard shortcut to insert a blank keyframe is very important, and it's F7. So we'll choose blank keyframe here, and the blank keyframe is created. So that skips the step of creating a keyframe and deleting the art, and saves a little bit of time. Now if I test the movie again, by pressing Command Return or Control Enter on the PC, I get the same result. And now the robot's talking. Let's close this window And there's a look at inserting and deleting keyframes.